Welcome back to the home front. I'm your host, Reed Galen. Today, guys, I am once again joined by the inimitable, the invincible, the Floridian Katie Fang. Katie, welcome back.
Reed, those all kind of worked until you hit Floridian. Then I was like,
Well, you have to be the first two to be able to live in Florida, at least in my
hell to the
experience.
yeah, hell to the yeah.
Well, welcome back, Katie. Thanks again for doing this. Hope you and yours had a good holiday. So let's talk our own backyard. Let's talk some Monroe Doctrine, the Caribbean. In Venezuela and its environs for the past several months, the United States military has been zapping boats in the Caribbean and a couple, I think, in the Pacific.
In the Pacific as well. Yeah.
Always allegedly, these are drug boats. But of course, we don't know that because they don't offer any proof. And if we are to believe that Pete Hegseth gave a don't leave anyone alive order, then you're never going to know who these guys were. They could be drug runners. They could be fishermen. We don't know. So give us a sense of, let's start with Hegseth and just the legality. I mean, let me back up. I'm a little bit surprised, Katie, that everybody is so shocked that the Trump administration or any of the goons that work for him would do something that wasn't legal. So why are we always constantly surprised? We're here 11 months into the presidency, and yet somehow people still can't figure it out.
Oh, because Reed, we're not supposed to be soulless ghouls, right? And I actually think it's good. Maybe it irritates others that we still are shocked when we do find this information, but I do think it's good that our conscience can still be shocked, because I think it militates towards us still wanting better than what we have. And because we continue to be shocked by the illegal and unconstitutional conduct of this administration, it means that there is hope for accountability. That's what keeps me going. Day in and day out is the thirst for the satisfaction of accountability that I know is going to happen. And the other thing, Reed, is we should actually be grateful that if they're going to crime this badly, that they do it so brazenly, because then it's harder to escape that accountability when it happens. So in this instance, when you have this huge middle finger being put up to not only Americans like you and I, just regular Joe citizens that want to know why people are getting blown up out of the water, but when you simultaneously are giving that middle finger to members of Congress, there does come a point when you kind of have to explain whether or not you still think you were justified in doing it. The explanation still has to see the light of day. And that is the reason why I am confident that we are going to get an explanation. It may not be to our moral satisfaction, but it's certainly going to have to see some version of sunlight, and pretty soon, Reed, because I think members of Congress are getting a little bit overwhelmed by it. And why? Because 2026 is around the corner, and you don't want to be affiliated with a party that's blowing people up out of the water.
So a couple of things there. One is, if we remember that going back to 2015 and 2016, Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, what was the whole concept? America first.
True.
Let's not get into wars, right? He was constantly bashing on George W. Bush and others for Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
No
more endless wars. We just heard that
right.
in 2024, didn't we?
Right.
No more
endless wars.
Yeah.
And so, these foreign adventures seem to cut across that. The second thing is the idea of wagging the dog, right? To your point about the Republicans in general, they are on their back foot for the first time in a while, politically, morally. A lot of their constituents, right, are people who utilize SNAP benefits. A lot of their constituents are people who utilize Medicaid. A lot of these things, or have made use of or have been able to afford healthcare coverage because of ACA subsidies that are going to expire here in 29 days. So that's the other part, which is, I thought that this whole thing was supposed to get back to make America great again, not make Venezuela a wasteland, which doesn't fit on a hat.
No, and the selective enforcement of who we punish as narco traffickers, we have to mention obviously Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who gets a quote full and unconditional pardon, even though he was facing 45 years in federal prison here in the United States for his role in facilitating the importation of hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States, including receiving bribes from El Chapo. We'll give a pardon to him because he's a member of a conservative party in Honduras that Trump wants to put his thumb on the scale for the elections on Sunday that are about to happen there. But we will go after Nicolas Maduro, which, by the way, let the record reflect, I'm not a Maduro fan at all, but I am not a fan but I'm a fan of justice. And I don't think blowing people out of the water under this guise of being narco traffickers, and even if they are, we don't blow them out of the water the way that they're doing it. The hypocrisy is rank, Reed. And but again, it gets back to the beginning of our conversation, does it not? It's the blatant stupidity, the brazen hypocrisy. They think that we're dumb and that we're not paying attention, but clearly we are paying attention. And the prospect of a land war with American blood being shed on foreign soil, that right before Christmas, no less, right? That should give some people some cause for pause.
So I want to read a passage from an article I found in the New Lines Institute by, what is this? Who is this? I don't know. I can't find the author. Anyway, but this was about the narco piece. It says, sure. Let's see. While Venezuela serves as a hub for transit illicit flows, it is not a prominent drug location, accounting for a small portion of global cocaine production and virtually no role in the fentanyl trade. Southcom, the area of the military command down there, said 80% of the drug flow into the United States from Southcom's area of responsibility went through the Eastern Pacific, while the flow through the Caribbean, the typical route for Venezuelan experts, accounted for only 20%. The DEA in 2021 said that only 8% of cocaine destined for the U.S. in 2020 was trafficked through the Caribbean from Venezuela. Accounting for this, some experts and analysts have challenged the premise that striking individual smuggling boats without evidence the drugs were present will deter drug flow. So that's just one part. But so, this is the other part, is like, what's the justification? Okay, well, it's narco trafficking, but that's like, yes, there are massive cartels in Venezuela. There's no question about that. But what Donald Trump is saying about why we're going to do this, or why we're doing this, or why we've moved the Gerald Ford strike group into the area, and there's 25,000 soldiers and Marines and airmen and everything else down there, right, doesn't hold water even a little bit. It holds less water than a Venezuelan fishing boat. And so now what we see is, there's no good argument for this, right? Like, even Trump is usually a willing liar, or there's some, like, build the wall, right? Let's just take build the wall. Yeah. That was
Steve Bannon's specialty. Yeah.
Right. He wasn't really going to build. Well, Steve Bannon, remember, convicted for taking money to quote unquote stealing wall.
And then he got his ass pardoned, and then he was no longer facing those charges anymore. Right. Yep.
Also pardoned. But now, like, this doesn't even hold up to basic scrutiny. This is thinner than toilet paper. So now you have no justification. You have, indiscriminate bombing of alleged fishing vessels. You've got Hexas out there saying, leave no man alive. And then it starts to say, okay, well, what is this really about? Is it because of Epstein? Is it because of the dying economy? Is it because of these things? Is it because of oil? Right? They're sitting on more oil than anybody else in the world.
The oil is a huge part. I don't think it's exclusive, but I think it is a big part of it. Yeah.
Right. Right. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who spent a lot of time in the oil and gas industry over the years. And he said, the issue with Venezuela, because it is pretty much a failed state, to your earlier point about Maduro, is that they have a lot of oil that they can produce, but because their refining facilities have fallen into such disrepair, they actually have to ship the stuff out and bring it back if they want to use it. So I'm sure, and look, having done work for the likes of Chevron and BP, right? Like, I know these guys, like, they're salivating. Right. There's nothing more they would love than the United States Marines and SEAL Team 6 to go secure a few refining facilities or pumping stations. Right.
Yeah. And stake an American flag.
Right.
And then that'll help mitigate some of the tariff drama that we have. Right. Which is something that Trump could point to and say, look, I'm fixing your oil and gas prices for you. Shit like that. Right. That's a total Trump move.
Yeah. But let's talk about that, because he just had Mohammed Bonesaw at the White House with all the wealthiest Americans. He's got, Venezuela is close to Russia, another gas station, and China. And so all of these things upset a hell of a lot of apple carts that if you're not careful, not only do you get American forces into a place that they can't get out of, a la, let's say, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, take your pick. But you now have very big and very aggressive people, very upset, looking for any reason to mess with us further. I can't imagine that bin Salman is okay with, hundreds of thousands of barrels more a day of Venezuelan oil, which would take theoretically years to come back online. But that drives the price down for everybody, including him. And he's floating on this ocean of oil to greenwash himself and everything else. So, I mean, it seems to me that even when you have quote unquote experts in the White House, these things don't tend to go well. We now have morons in the White House.
Yeah, and look, I think everything is inextricably intertwined these days, Reed. I'm going to speak from a space of personal experience, having lived in South Florida for decades. We had a huge influx of Venezuelans into Miami because of the failure of the government in Venezuela. And now we have the revocation of the temporary protected status and other asylum kind of level status being provided for so many Venezuelans and others that they're now scrambling to figure out where do we go and how do we get there. So this idea that Venezuela is now suddenly being told you're bad, as in Maduro, you're bad, when a lot of Venezuelans have been saying Maduro is bad, is bad, is bad. Well, yeah, but remember, there's also the bigger scheme, Reed, when it comes to the immigration component of this, which is, you've got the whole, let me scratch this itch of being like, this toxic masculinity, scratch the jock kind of energy from Hegseth and others, right? That's one component of it.
Right.
But think about how the Alien Enemies Act was used to do the illegal deportations of individuals. And now when and remember, the guise of AEA was what? Tren de Aragua, which is a huge kind of promoter and facilitator of the drug trade, et cetera, in Venezuela, and allegedly working with the Venezuelan government, right? To be able to do, the Maduro government is helping Tren de Aragua. So, Trump faced his own constitutional and legal defects with the AEA invocation, which he also used, though, this whole idea of drug-infested, crime-riddled cities to federalize our National Guard. So it's all it all touches in the same spaces, right? So if you can go after the country that you've kind of used and uplifted as the genesis of all the problems of the United States, in Trump's world, that's a way of saying America first, right? It's right. I'm fixing the problem of why I've had to federalize our National Guard. I'm fixing an immigration problem of stopping Tren de Aragua and all the shit that comes from Venezuela into our United States that has justified the deportation of people. I'm fixing the problem of fill in the blank, right? Oil and gas supply. Either way you look at it, he's just trying to throw shit on the wall and hopefully something sticks.
Right.
But the problem is he's walking us into a land war. And I don't think that the advice he's being given, I don't think he's being given advice at all. And if it is, I think it's just to tee him up so that somebody can 25th Amendment his ass and J.D. Vance can become president of the United States. Like, I really do believe that this is a part of a grander scheme. I think Hegseth is probably operating in his own world of just testosterone in and of itself, and he's just a fucking dumbass. But I do think there's something a little bit more nefarious at play when it comes to having Trump do all of this dumb shit, stumbling along, and then let's point to his, addled brain, his dementia, and all of these bad decisions and say, get this motherfucker out of the White House and let's put in J.D. Vance.
Well, the MRI said that it was the greatest MRI that's ever been given since MRIs. In fact, the magnets were gold plated. It was so great. So I want to talk about the military aspect of this. So this comes from a blog called War on the Rocks and written by Orlando Perez back on November 17th. And he said, quote, toppling Maduro is the easy part. What follows is the hard strategic slog of policing a sprawling, heavily armed society where state services have collapsed and regime loyalists, criminal syndicates, and colectivos, pro-government armed groups that police neighborhoods and terrorize dissidents, all compete for turf. Colombia's National Liberation Army and dissident Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia factions operate openly from Venezuelan safe havens, running mining and smuggling routes, recruiting and staging cross-border attacks. They would not go like what quietly. I mean, Katie, who does this sound like? What does this sound like? It was one thing like when you went to Iraq, right, in 2003, Saddam had basically stifled all dissent, right? Viciously stifled all
Yeah,
dissent.
there was no
And
version of dissidence. Yeah.
right. And when we went in, we broke everything, right? The as Colin Powell called it, the pottery barn problem, right? You break it, you own it. Here, the pottery's already broken, right? These people already exist. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of young, heavily armed AK-47 laden men would love nothing more, right, than to knock off a couple of Yankees.
Oh yeah, they're trigger happy. And the problem is this. There is no what is it? There's no altruism in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were saying to the world, Venezuelans specifically, I see you suffering. I am coming in. It's a little Big Brother-esque, right? But I'm coming in to fix this problem for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Reed, we would do it in a way that would involve international cooperation, right? There would be something, and putting aside the futility and the intelligence behind doing that, none of that altruism exists here. The idea isn't to get rid of and to clean up what's happening in Venezuela. The idea
Right.
is to get Maduro out of the way to install whom? That's the big question that isn't being answered. Who is going to step into this vacuum of power? But more importantly, when did our American military get into the business of having to go and be a de facto police force now in Venezuela, where I don't want to see American blood shed on Venezuelan soil? For what? For
Right.
narco trafficking? I'm not quite sure what is happening here, other than this just is a brazen attempt to gin up some weird fucking patriotic energy, I think.
Mm.
And I think that's where it's so fatally flawed. And I hate to use the word fatal on it, but I do think that's exactly where we're heading.
Well, and again, we don't have. I mean, if you think back throughout history of successful invasions, land invasions, 25,000 men, soldiers, Marines, ain't gonna do it, right? Even with all
You
of
may
the
start with it, but it ain't going to stop there, right?
no, I
They're not
mean,
going to roll over and play dead and be like, "Oh, you got us,
no,
bye."
and yes, okay, so like all of the naval assets, all of the Air Force assets, right? Of course, they're all near homes, right? So
Yep.
near the U.S. So there's plenty of tomahawks and bombers and everything else. But as we saw, you can bomb people into oblivion. They don't give up, right? At some point, men with guns must go take turf. And the idea of toppling Maduro again, what are you going to do? Stand, ring the presidential palace with United States Marines, and like it just doesn't make any sense. And so let me go back to something that these six members of the United States Senate did, which is basically don't
Mm.
follow any illegal orders. Now, it seems to me they're sort of being given credit for talking about Venezuela. I think they were talking more about domestically, but it seems to
Oh,
work
that's
one way or the
interesting.
other.
You think more
Um,
like the National Guard kind of
yeah,
energy? Is that what you mean? Oh,
yeah. I
interesting.
mean
Yeah.
that's the sense I get was that was what they were trying to tell people. I don't, but it worked out, right? Like
Well, it
sometimes,
covers the waterfront because there's illegal orders happening all over the place, right? Domestic and
right,
internationally. So there you go.
right. And so you're sitting there. You're the one. I think it's probably a 1-star admiral who's in command of the Ford Strike Group. I don't know who the 4-star general is who's in charge of Southern Command, right? But like we've already seen a little bit of this with Hegseth and the second attack, which is they're of course never going to take the blame for it. So they're going to now start looking for members of the military to blame for it. And I would venture to say that there are probably some who said, well, wait a second, you're blaming us. You're the ones who told us to do this stuff. Right. And now I wonder too, if, there was under the Clinton administration, remember how much the military was annoyed because they lawyered everything. Right. Until and even the Obama administration, like, we're not going to do anything until lawyers tell us it's okay. I
Sure.
wonder now if combatant commanders are calling their JAG officers and saying, look at this. I'm not doing anything until you tell me it's okay.
Were you
Right.
were you spying on me, Reed? Because right before I just joined you, I was just wrapping up an episode for my YouTube channel that's going to go up just shortly today, and it talks about the decimation and the reworking of the JAG Corps, courtesy of Pete Hegseth, and the re-envisioning of the JAG Corps to be something that it used to that it's never been, which
Mm-hmm.
is let's give legal cover for a more aggressive military style for all of our military branches. And so those kind of cautionary legal, voices, they're being given political litmus tests, Reed, according to sources at the Department of Defense, which is there was this huge purge that happened back in February of this year where they kind of did a late night purge of all
Right.
these people that are JAG across all of the military branches. And now the new kind of let's fill in those positions, it's a political purity test. Do you believe in the Biden way of life or do you believe in the Trump Hegseth way of life? And if it's the latter, you're on. If it's the former, get the fuck out of here. And so you're not going to hear the cautionary voices anymore. You're going to hear the people that we allegedly have already said, oh, it's okay. According to the Trump administration, up and down the legal chain of command, they've said that all of this is kosher. And yet I want to underscore something, Reed, which is we're not at war.
Right.
So, we're even calling what's happening right now war crimes. We're not at war.
Right.
This is just murder. It's just
right.
murder.
You don't
Okay?
need to call it anything
We don't need to
fancier
call
than murder.
anything
Not to make light of it, but yes.
Right?
Right.
And so if you're in a chain of command and you're being told to commit murder, I think your own internal compass would be telling you, fuck off. I'm not doing that. Court martial me. I'm happy to present transparency as to why I didn't take an order to kill people when it was illegal. So, this whole disbanding of even the legality in our military, because we've seen it happening everywhere else, right? In every sense of the word, civil and criminally, we've seen these pardons, we've seen all of this stuff happening. It's even happening in our military now.
So, I mean, the other part too is that the Republicans in Congress have been assiduous about, up to now, that might change, about trying to avoid a vote on military action in Venezuela.
Right, they punted. They didn't even want to pass the Tim Kaine one, right? They were like, "Oh, we're not going to do that one,"
because they know. I think that they probably know. Especially, I'm sure Johnson knows in the House. He probably doesn't have the votes to beat it back, right? Like, I think there are probably enough sort of like MTGs, Massies, and other sort of hardcore MAGA isolationists, call them, who would be like, absolutely not. The other part too is going back to America first. I'm going to put it in quotes. America first. Like, we can't afford this, right? We spend $1 trillion a year on the American military. We're 38 trillion in the hole already, right? Military operations are horrendously expensive. They are horrendously hard on military equipment. You have to replace all those bombs, all those machine gun bullets, all those things, right? And so now, again, as winter is coming on, we now have people who are, we saw the disruption in society, in American society, with SNAP benefits being delayed for many people. We saw the disruption to American travel with TSA officers and air traffic controllers, not being paid, and how that was going to affect things. As we noted at the top, and we have ACA subsidies running out here. So there's a lot of stuff, and not to mention roads, bridges, all of the other stuff, right, that needs to be done here, right? And this is where I think that a lot of MAGA supporters thought this is supposed to be, which is, wait a second, like, we got problems here that we're supposed to take care of. Why are you doing this? And I think that is one where, from me, you've already seen from some Republicans, it's like, oh, you're taking the side of narco traffickers. Anytime a Republican says that, Democrats should just punch him in the face. Be like, no, I don't want young men I don't want young American men and women getting killed for Donald Trump being afraid of Jeffrey Epstein, right? Like, always bring it back to something.
To Epstein. Well, here's the thing too. So I did this Substack piece yesterday where I was really mad about this pardoning of Juan Orlando Hernandez. As a former prosecutor and somebody who actually was assigned to a specialized narcotics detail with the feds, because I'm in Miami, right? Cocaine Cowboys. Sure. It troubled me because this is a guy who clearly contributed to the deaths of Americans through the importation of the cocaine, right? Dirty motherfucker all the way through. But the thing, Reed, for me was this. Let no Republican say shit about public safety and crime unless you're speaking up about this pardoning of Hernandez, right? It's the same thing that you just said. No Republican can credibly stand there and have any type of, objection or dissension about anything unless they're willing to call out what is about to happen, which is one drop of American blood shed over this. You as a Republican should say, I'm defecting from the fucking party, because there is no justification that could ever be provided that would ever comfort the spouse, parent, sibling, whatever of an American soldier who dies over Venezuela.
Or think about this. I posited this on Twitter yesterday just to watch the trolls
Oh,
swarm.
Twitter no less.
Oh man, it is.
A cesspool.
It's just an aside. The New York Times ran this story about David Sachs, who is this
Oh
con
yeah, of
man
course.
in the
Yes.
White House shilling for crypto and AI, and every techno bro in the country who wants something out of Sachs or who is afraid that they're going to get cut off was coming to his defense, which was hilarious in and of itself. But I said, what happens when the first F-18 takes off from the Ford on an airstrike over Venezuela? And assuming that Venezuela does have some air defenses, right? Let's say he gets shot down, right?
I mean, that's optimism that there's air defenses, but yeah.
But
well,
the
what are you going
point
to do?
is,
You're going to also just bomb a whole bunch of villagers too? I mean,
right.
is that
So
we're
now you've
gonna
got
not have that?
So you've got an American airman now in captivity, and you're bombing, yeah, as you said, civilians in huts.
Civilians.
And we've done this before, and it never ever works out.
Are people
right?
also not going to ignore what the terrain is like in Venezuela? It's not like a fucking desert either, right? Like
Right.
it's just not, it's just this is a guerrilla warfare type of situation. And I feel like people, well, I don't know. I feel like we are paying attention though, Reed. I mean, I feel like we all are.
Right. And let's talk about the neighborhood down there, right? The Colombians don't want us there. The Brazilians don't want us there.
Well, he said he revoked the visa for the Colombian president and said that guy was a drug overlord too.
Right.
Don't forget he didn't like Colombia's president either.
Is he gonna? Do you think he'll pardon Noriega? Is Noriega still alive?
Oh, shit, man, I think Manuel Noriega dropped dead. Did he not?
Okay. I don't know. But if he's not, he'll be on his way back to Panama City any day now. Right.
But let's just reinstall. I think Imelda Marcos died too, right?
Yeah, we're running out, and Pinochet's dead.
Like that. Yeah.
Right, like they're all dead.
They're all gone. Yeah.
But that's okay. He's going to find some more. And the search would probably be a lot shorter than we'd think. Okay, so bring us home here. We got a few minutes left.
Sure.
So where do you think this goes? I mean, Roger Wicker, senator from Mississippi, Republican senator from Mississippi, has opened an inquiry into this. Now, Wicker is no liberal, right? He is no purple-haired progressive. But I think he probably in this case does take his job seriously, more in the context probably of, in his mind, I would guess, protecting the military as opposed to helping the Trump administration.
True.
So give us your sense of where this goes here, because again, all of these things for White Houses, right? They never seem to understand this. Like all of these things happen simultaneously. Right. Like you can't spend all your time in Venezuela and try and figure out Congress. You can't spend all your time on Congress and figure out Ukraine. Right. Like there's only so many days in the week, so many hours in the day. So give us your sense of what happens in the next couple of weeks or right before New Year's.
I think Congress, because Congress was never a part of any declared war in this instance. Right. So Congress's role has been stolen from it for purposes of justification of what is happening right now. And I think the fact that Republicans specifically are reeling from what just happened with the government shutdown, et cetera, I think that you're going to see truly bipartisan work to at least get answers. I think what you've heard is some very carefully crafted commentary from Republicans so far saying we just need some information. Like, we're not going to pass judgment on whether the admiral in this instance messed up or, whatever. A lot of people have been very careful about this. And I think understandably because, the military can be a very much of a black box thing, right?
Sure.
A lot of Americans don't know. A lot of us think we know, but a lot of that is framed from what you've seen in movies and TV, which is dramatized, right? So I think there's a very careful deference that's being given to the military when it comes to these things. But Reed, we're not being led by a Colin Powell. We're being led by DUI hire Pete Hegseth. And so I think even the most stalwart Trump supporters know that Hegseth is a fucking short fuse powder keg guy, right? And so I think that their plausible deniability and cover comes from saying, let's just get this information out. And then we'll be able to move forward. But at the same time, in a very grotesque way, I'm grateful the shit is happening on the eve of 2026 midterms because I do think the blowback is going to be huge. But I, again, want to underscore, we're not in a war. And so I don't want a single drop of blood shed for Venezuela. I just don't.
Right. And let's talk about the military one more sec before I let you go, is that,
Sure.
you don't get stars on your shoulder unless you are a political animal in your own right. That you are a very politically savvy operator. There are only so many, there's very few billets, right, past colonel or commander or captain, I should say, in the Navy. And so you have to understand that when his fellow flag officers see that Admiral Bradley is now being, called out, right? Like they're
By
like, wait a
Hegseth.
second.
By
Yeah,
Hegseth,
by
no less.
Hegseth
Yeah.
in the context of supporting him, right? Um,
It
you
was
know,
his decision, and I fully support his decision. I'm gonna
right.
say what? But
Yeah,
but Caroline Levitt said it was Trump's decision that was told to you, Pete Hegseth, and that you gave the verbal command.
right.
We're paying attention.
But last thing too, to speak of politics in a military metaphor, is this is now the time where I think we need to fight multiple fronts, which is, yes, we should be holding Trump and Hegseth's feet to the fire on Venezuela and making sure we do not go to war there. But we should also be holding the feet of every Republican member of Congress to the fire in their districts, not necessarily on Venezuela, but on everything else that they're responsible for.
Oh yeah.
For
SNAP,
me,
ACA, Epstein. Listen, it's December
yeah,
2nd. December 19th is the Epstein Transparency Act. That's the due date for all the stuff.
right, which of course is we're not going to get. So like that's and so again, if most Americans don't have, most working class or poor Americans probably don't have the time or the wherewithal to worry about what's going on in Venezuela. They got more pressing issues at home.
Yeah,
And so I think
farmers filing for bankruptcy because we're
right,
bailing out fucking Argentina to the tune of $40 billion. Yeah, shit like that.
right, or Tyson shutting down yet another plant in Nebraska and putting thousands, I think,
How
of
about
people out of work.
no workers for our agriculture communities anymore? How about
Right.
that?
And so that's where I would be, go to where the people are already, upset and frustrated and worried, right? Like this is a global issue. It speaks again to the incompetence and the corruption of Trump. Use it in that context, politically, I mean. But
Oh yeah,
don't forget
the
the
Democrats
argument.
specialize, but Reed, I don't have to tell you this because you've done this for fucking decades. The Democrats always cheat themselves of incredible opportunities. So the lost opportunity cost for Democrats is always a profound one, more so for Democrats than it is for Republicans. So I hope they're listening to this conversation because you're right. That's exactly. I said, God, I don't know how long ago now, maybe like a month ago. I said what we should have been doing as Democrats, which I didn't understand why we weren't, is during the government shutdown, Reed, you know what we should have been doing? Every single day, we should have taken a card table under a little umbrella tent, parked in Lafayette Square across from the White House, and just invited everyday Americans to come and sit and talk about the fact that they're not going to have health insurance next year, the fact that they don't have SNAP benefits, the fact that they cannot pay their rent. That's the type of conversations Democrats should have been doing.
Yeah, and listen, unfortunately, our Democratic friends are not fans of spectacle, which works, right? I'm not saying you should use it exclusively, but you should use it as one tool in the toolbox. And
visibility. I say visibility is what it is. It's not spectacle so much as it's visibility on things,
And then, as the political campaigner in me too says, these guys are 14 points down in the generic ballot for 2026. Now is the time to hit them in the head with hammers and frying pans, right? They're already on their back heels. Convince if Marjorie Taylor Greene and Troy Nehls, right?
Troy Nehls is like, peace out.
Two true freaks are like, I'm out of here. And Don Bacon, who I've had my differences with, but is, I think, all things considered, if you had to choose one, you'd probably choose him, is like, I'm out of here. Scare more of them off, but you have to do that now, right? You have to do that now.
Guess who would do that? The Republicans.
Oh,
How
for
do
sure.
you know? Because they just killed two people clinging to the debris of a boat. They were saying, what is it? Finish them off? That's exactly what Pete Hegseth said to do, right? So, yeah.
All right. So on that upbeat, hard-hitting note, Katie, where can everybody find you? I know so many people can, but for those that don't know, where can they find you?
Well, I have a YouTube channel, Katie Phang News, Phang is the spelling of my last name. You can also check me out at Katie Phang. That is my handle on Substack and on blue sky. I still am on the cesspool of Twitter, and I'm also on. It is a cesspool. Read, please. That
Man,
place is just.
it's really ugly.
It's a really ugly place to be. But I'm a little bit everywhere all at once. But I'm always grateful to spend time with you, Reed. These are always very stimulating conversation and always gives me a lot to think about. So I'm grateful for your friendship and for your wisdom on a lot of the stuff.
Well, thanks for coming on. As always, gang, you can find me here on the home front at Substack. I hope you'll subscribe. Also at Reed Galen across the socials, and at Reed Galen _ USA, I think, at Twitter and Threads. Anyway, Katie, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Reed.
Everybody else, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.